Man, look, I need you to sit with something for a second because what just happened at Angie Martinez's Summer BBQ was not a performance. It was a public execution, and the person holding the knife was not the one anybody expected. Remy Ma walked out on that stage, grabbed a microphone, and in front of a sold-out Power 105.1 crowd, she looked directly into the camera and told the entire hip-hop world that the reason her marriage to Papoose has not been legally dissolved is because that man is standing in a courtroom asking for half of her money, half of her assets, of her catalog, of everything she built while he was allegedly out here fumbling record deals and dropping 12 albums a year that nobody streamed. And I need you to understand who this shrapnel is landing on, because it is not just Papoose anymore. The person catching the biggest piece of this blast is Claressa Shields, the two-time Olympic gold medalist, the self-proclaimed GWAT, the woman who has spent the last year and a half of her life on every podcast, every red carpet, every Instagram post trying to convince the culture that she is the new black love, that she is the upgrade, that she is the woman Papoose left home for. And now the receipts are out, the timeline is broken, the whole narrative she has been selling since December of 2024 is on the floor in pieces, and the man she has been calling her king is being publicly branded as a Kendu Isaacs 2.0 in front of the entire industry. This is not a rumor. This is not a subtweet. This is Remy Ma at a Power 105 event with French Montana and Maxby in the building, altering her diss lyrics in real time to include Papoose'S name so nobody could pretend it was subliminal anymore. What you have been told about this situation is not what is actually happening in this situation. And by the time we get to the part where I break down why Papoose'S entire network of industry connections has evaporated while Remy's Rolodex looks like a Rock Nation brunch, you are going to understand that Claressa Shields did not steal a husband. She inherited a liability. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now, for anybody who is just tuning into this saga, let me set the table properly because this story has more layers than a Bronx bodega sandwich, and if you do not understand the timeline, you cannot understand the betrayal. Papoose, real name Shamil Mackey, married Remy Ma Smith while she was incarcerated in Bedford Hills, and for the better part of a decade the two of them were sold to the culture as the last real example of black love in hip-hop. Militant. Loyal. Ride or die. He held her down through the bid. She came home. They had a daughter named Reminisce Mackenzie. They did the love and hip-hop New York run. They did the podcast circuit. They did the matching tattoos. They did the whole package. Then in December of 2024, Remy Ma announced publicly that she and Papoose were separated. Weeks later, Claressa Shields, the most decorated female boxer in American history, started popping up in Papoose'S social media orbit. Studio cameos. Soft launches. Vacation photos. By May of 2025, Papoose officially filed for divorce, and by early 2026 Claressa was on every microphone she could find declaring that she and Papoose were entering the new year together and planning a baby for 2027. That is the narrative Claressa has been selling. That is the story her PR run has been built on. Black Love 2.0. Or, as she awkwardly tried to rebrand it in one of the worst public relations moments I have seen in years, Gold Love, because in her words, black fades in the wash, but gold does not, which, first of all, is not a sentence any human being should ever say into a functioning microphone, and, second of all, is the exact kind of desperate mythologizing that a woman does when she knows the ground under her feet is not solid. And now, as of this weekend in early August of 2026, the ground has officially cracked open. Because Remy Ma just told the world, on stage, on camera, with the beat still knocking, that the reason none of this is legally clean yet is because Papoose is in a room somewhere asking for half of her bag. So, what are the stakes here? Musically, Remy is in the middle of a career renaissance that Papoose cannot touch. Culturally, the entire narrative of who the villain is in this triangle just flipped. Financially, we are watching a man reportedly try to leverage a marriage he emotionally exited from into a payday off a woman who built her catalog largely without him. And reputationally, Claressa Shields is now standing next to a man who the culture is starting to view as a leech. And every day this divorce is delayed is another day her fight camp interviews turn into interrogations about a marriage she is not even legally part of yet. So the question that is going to drive the rest of this video is simple. If Papoose really wanted to be with Claressa the way Claressa keeps telling us he does, why is he the one holding the divorce hostage over money? And what does that answer tell us about who Claressa Shields actually chose? Let us start with the surface, because the surface alone is already devastating. Piece of evidence number 1 is the clip that broke the internet this weekend. Angie Martinez's Summer BBQ, a sold-out Power 105.1 event. French Montana on the bill, Max B fresh out and back in the building, Zeddy will performing, the whole New York rap ecosystem in one place. Remy Ma steps to the microphone, and before she even performs, she addresses the audience with the coldest intro I have heard from a female rapper in a decade. She says, and I want you to hear the exact words, to further clarify, I'll be single, when these ninjas stop asking for half. But that's between me and y'all. That is not a subliminal. That is not shade. That is a public court filing set to a beat. She said single, meaning the paperwork is not final, meaning she is legally still married, and she named the reason. Half of her assets. In the same breath. In front of Angie Martinez. On camera. Piece of evidence number 2 comes seconds later when the beat drops and Remy performs an updated version of her Papoose'S diss track, and this time she does not leave anything to interpretation. She raps, and I quote, the nerve of these ninjas claiming that they wrote those hits, when they whole career they ain't never go straight. Not for me or anybody else. You always acting like you helping Pap, help yourself. She inserted his name directly into the lyrics. Not a nickname. Not a reference. His name. In front of a Bronx crowd that was recording every second of it. Piece of evidence number 3 is the visual itself, the way the crowd reacted, the way French Montana was nodding, the way this immediately turned into the most clipped moment of the entire event across TikTok, Instagram Reels, and Twitter. This was not a private jab that leaked. This was a coordinated cultural moment designed to be seen. Piece of evidence number 4, and this is the one Claressa's team should be losing sleep over, is the interview Remy just did with Angie Martinez days before the barbecue, where she talked about being at a Knicks game and Rihanna walking up to her and saying, "Oh my God, I love you, you might be." Rihanna. A$AP Rocky. Angie Martinez. Cardi B, who has publicly sided with Remy in every interview she has been asked about this situation. Fat Joe, who Remy has been affiliated with since Terror Squad days, and who now has a podcast with Jadakiss on Netflix. These are the names circling Remy Ma right now. And I need everybody to understand what that means, because in the New York rap ecosystem, connections are currency, and Remy just cashed a check the size of the Bronx. Meanwhile, where is Papoose? Where is industry cosigns? Where is big features? He is signed to Win Records, an independent label that has never produced a hit that reached anywhere near the cultural relevance of Remy's catalog. His last major moment was the 12 albums in 12 months stunt from a few years ago that generated headlines but zero replay value. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is walking around quoting a Papoose'S bar from 2025. Nobody is putting him on a barbecue lineup next to French Montana and Max B. The industry has already made its choice, and the industry chose Remy. That is the surface. That is what anybody with a phone can verify in the next 10 minutes. And I have not even gotten to the part where the picture actually gets ugly. And oh, do I have more for you? Because if you are a Claressa Shields fan and you are already in the comments typing about how none of this matters and Remy is just bitter, I need you to close the app, take a walk, come back, and sit down. Because what I am about to walk you through in this next section is the part of the story that the podcast bros and the fight camp reporters have been too scared to say out loud. This is the cultural evidence layer. This is the receipts from inside the room. This is where we stop talking about what Remy said on stage and start talking about what the entire industry has been quietly signaling for the last 8 months. The fans really are not going to like this one. I promise you. By the time we get to the part where I break down why 50 Cent, of all people, has been publicly friendly with Remy while beefing with Papoose, you are going to understand that this was never a fair fight to begin with. Let us start with the interview that turned into an ambush. A few weeks ago, Claressa Shields sat down with a reporter to promote her upcoming fight camp, and somewhere in the middle of what was supposed to be a boxing interview, the reporter looked her in the face and asked whether Papoose knew she was planning to have a baby in 2027. Read that back. The reporter asked if the father of the alleged future child was aware of the pregnancy plan. That is not a boxing question. That is a public credibility question. That is a journalist looking at a woman who has spent a year telling the world she is in a committed relationship and openly asking if the man in that relationship is even part of the conversation. Piece of cultural evidence number 1, and it should tell you everything about how the industry actually perceives this situation. Because reporters do not ask questions like that unless the smoke around the story has gotten thick enough that the question is no longer rude, it is fair. Piece of cultural evidence number 2 is the Ariel Helwani moment, and this one is the most telling shift I have seen in Claressa's public persona this entire year. Claressa sits down with Helwani, one of the biggest combat sports interviewers on the planet, and she starts listing off her favorite female rappers. Eve, Lil Kim, Foxy Brown. Helwani, who knows exactly what he is doing, looks at her and asks, and I am paraphrasing, but only barely, what about Remy Ma, do you love her too? And Claressa's whole demeanor collapses. She takes a sip of water. She says something like, oh, I think you went too far, Ariel. She gets visibly agitated. But here is what I want you to notice, and this is the part that matters. She did not say a word back to Ariel Helwani. She did not clap back. She did not go viral defending herself against him. But that same week she was on Instagram posting cryptic messages about ops teaming up and bees needing to wait until she catches them outside, aimed clearly and specifically at other Black women in the culture who have questioned her. Piece of cultural evidence number 3. She will fight the women. She will not fight the man holding the microphone. That is not confidence. That is a pattern. Piece of cultural evidence number 4 is the Cardi B alignment, and this one is a business signal, not a personal one. Cardi B, one of the most powerful voices in current hip-hop, has publicly aligned herself with Remy Ma at multiple points in this fallout. And when Cardi picks a side in a beef, the industry moves. Cardi's fan base is enormous, her Bronx allegiance is real, and her endorsement of Remy is functionally an endorsement of Remy's narrative. Piece of cultural evidence number 5, and this is the one that changes the whole picture, is the 50 Cent factor. 50 has been in an on and off public beef with Papoose for years. 50 has also, publicly and repeatedly, spoken warmly about Remy Ma. 50 just squashed his beef with Fat Joe and Jadakiss on camera, which puts him even closer to Remy's orbit by association. Now I know some of you are going to say 50 beefs with everybody, and it does not mean anything, and I want to give you that counter-argument its due, because you are partially right. 50 is combative by nature. But here is why it still matters in this specific case. 50 is a businessman first and a beef merchant second. He does not maintain public warmth with someone unless there is a strategic reason. And when the most calculating businessman in hip-hop is publicly friendly with one half of a divorcing couple and publicly hostile with the other, that is not personality, that is positioning. And positioning is information. Piece of cultural evidence number 6 is the silence from Papoose'S camp. When Remy dropped the asking for half bomb at the barbecue, where were his allies? Where were the receipts pushing back? Where were the industry voices saying she is exaggerating? Silence. Absolute silence. The only people defending Papoose in public are Claressa Shields and her personal fan account. That is not an alliance. That is a woman and her comment section. And when the cultural evidence stacks up this cleanly on one side, it stops being a beef and starts being a verdict. But we have not gotten to the real story yet. Because everything I have shown you so far is entertainment. Everything I am about to show you next is business. And the business is where the truth actually lives. Alright, forget the barbecue for a second. Forget the diss lyrics. Forget the Ariel Helwani interview. I want you to shift your brain into a completely different gear because what I am about to walk you through is the part of this story that nobody on the podcast circuit is willing to explain to you, and it is the only part that actually matters in the long run. This is the industry layer. This is the meta. This is why the story you have been watching on Instagram is a symptom of a much larger disease, and Papoose is not the villain of it. Papoose is a byproduct of it. There are 3 systemic angles I need you to understand, and they all connect. Angle number 1 is the economics of long-term rap marriages, and specifically the asymmetry in earning power between Remy Ma and Papoose over the last 15 years. When you look at the publicly available data on Remy's catalog, her Terror Squad affiliation, her love and hip-hop run, her podcast work, her tours, her endorsement deals, and her Reminisce music imprint, you are looking at a woman who has diversified her income across at least 6 revenue streams. Publishing, streaming, touring, television, podcasting, brand deals. Papoose, by contrast, has spent the better part of a decade signed to Win Records under Ruben Rodriguez, an independent label with limited distribution power, and his primary income streams have reportedly been mixtape releases, features, and appearances tied largely to his marriage to Remy. Do you understand what that means legally? In a divorce proceeding in New York State, which is an equitable distribution state, the higher-earning spouse's assets accumulated during the marriage are subject to division. And if one spouse can credibly argue that they supported the household while the other spouse's career failed to launch, that is exactly the kind of case where a request for half is not just legally defensible, it is strategically calculated. Papoose is not asking for half because he is desperate. He is allegedly asking for half because the paperwork gives him a royal shot. That is why this divorce has not been finalized. Angle number 2 is the media manufacturing of the Claressa Shields narrative, and this is where things get really uncomfortable. Since December 2024, Claressa has been on an aggressive PR run. Every major podcast, every combat sports platform, every red carpet, every Instagram post, and the consistent theme across every single appearance has been the same 3 talking points. He filed for divorce because of me. We are planning a baby. This is real love. Now step back. Why does one specific narrative need to be repeated across that many platforms in that short a time frame? In media strategy terms, that is called saturation messaging. And saturation messaging is what you do when the underlying facts of your story are weak and the only way to make the public believe them is to hear them repeated so many times that repetition substitutes for evidence. Compare that to Remy Ma, who has said almost nothing publicly for months, and when she finally did speak, she did it once, on stage, with witnesses, and let the clip do the work. That is the behavior of someone who has the facts. Saturation messaging is the behavior of someone who has a story. Angle number 3 is the disappearance of Papoose'S industry support system, and this is the systemic angle that ties everything together. Papoose came up under DJ K-Slay, may he rest in peace, who was one of the most influential mixtape DJs of the last 25 years and who was reportedly Papoose's earliest and most important industry champion. K-Slay passed in 2022. And in the years since, Papoose has not developed a comparable replacement for that kind of gatekeeper support. He is not on the Fat Joe podcast rotation. He is not in the Angie Martinez interview cycle. He is not being invited to the Netflix specials. He is not getting the French Montana feature. He is not getting the Cardi B cosign. And that is not an accident. That is what happens in the music industry when a legacy artist loses their primary champion and fails to build institutional relationships to replace that support. Meanwhile, Remy Ma has spent that same window aggressively rebuilding her industry footprint. Terror Squad reactivation. Fat Joe partnership. Angie Martinez alignment. Cardi B relationship. French Montana collaboration. Max B reintroduction. She did not just survive the separation. She used the separation as a runway to relaunch. Now put all 3 angles together. Papoose is the lower-earning spouse in an equitable distribution state. Claressa is running a saturation PR campaign to prop up a story that the industry is not buying. Papoose has no industry champions left to defend him or amplify his side of the narrative. What does that give you? It gives you a man who has one legal move left, and that move is to hold out for as much of Remy's assets as the New York courts will grant him, because financially and industrially, he has no other exit ramp. He is not fighting for love. He is not fighting for Claressa. He is not even fighting for his image. He is fighting for a settlement. And Claressa Shields, whether she knows it or not, is not the woman he chose. She is the leverage he is using to run out the clock while the divorce lawyers negotiate. And that right there is the truth bomb this entire situation has been building toward. And I need you to sit with the weight of it for a minute before we move on, because this is the reveal that reframes every single thing you have watched about this triangle since December of 2024. Claressa Shields is not in a love story. Claressa Shields is in a financial maneuver. Every interview she has done, every soft launch, every red carpet appearance, every baby announcement, every gold love speech, has functioned as public relations cover for a divorce proceeding that Papoose is allegedly weaponizing to extract the maximum possible share of Remy Ma's marital assets. Read that back. Because if that framing is correct, and every piece of evidence in the last 20 months points to it being correct, then the villain of this story is not Papoose the cheater. The villain is Papoose the strategist. And the tragic figure is not Remy Ma, who is thriving, touring, hitting stages with French Montana and Max B, getting Rihanna cosigns at Knicks games, and dropping diss records in front of Angie Martinez. The tragic figure is Claressa Shields, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, one of the greatest female athletes of her generation, who has been publicly used as a decoy in a divorce negotiation and does not appear to realize it yet. Now I want to be clear, and I am going to say this the way I have to say it. Everything about the specific financial claims in this case is based on reported information, allegedly reported by sources close to the situation, publicly stated by Remy Ma from a stage, and interpreted by me based on publicly available evidence. I cannot show you the divorce filing. I cannot show you the settlement negotiations. What I can show you is a pattern. And the pattern is airtight. Papoose files for divorce in May 2025. Papoose does not finalize the divorce for over a year and counting. Claressa Shields spends that entire year publicly performing the role of the new wife-to-be. Remy Ma spends that entire year quietly rebuilding her industry position and refusing to sign paperwork that would give away half of what she built. And now, on August 3rd of 2026, Remy Ma stands on a Power 105 stage and tells the entire culture that the reason the paperwork is not signed is because Papoose is asking for half. That is not a coincidence. That is not miscommunication. That is a legal strategy that has been running in real time since 2025, and the entire Claressa Shields PR run has been the smokescreen. Do you understand how devastating that is? Do you understand what that means for Claressa's public image going forward? Because now every single interview she has done, every baby plan she has announced, every "he chose me" speech she has given, is going to be rewatched by the culture through a completely different lens. She was not the reason he filed. She was the reason he could stall. She was the reason he could keep the marriage active in the public imagination while the settlement got negotiated behind the scenes. And the moment that divorce is finalized, whether Papoose gets his half or not, the calculus of that entire relationship is going to shift because the strategic function she was serving will no longer be necessary. That is the reveal. That is the picture. And I am sorry to be the one who has to say it out loud, but somebody had to, and if it is not going to be the podcast bros who are too busy chasing fight camp access, it is going to be me. But here is the part one want you to leave this video feeling good about, because in the middle of all of this mess, there is a hero, and the hero is winning. Remy Ma is winning. Remy Ma is doing shows. Remy Ma is dropping bars. Remy Ma is on stage with French Montana and Max B performing Bronx anthems in front of a sold-out crowd. Remy Ma is getting Rihanna love at Knicks games. Remy Ma is getting Angie Martinez interviews. Remy Ma is holding her ground in a divorce proceeding and refusing to hand over the assets she built with her own pen, her own voice, and her own name. And Remy Ma is doing all of that while raising her daughter, while maintaining her dignity, while not going on 10 different podcasts a week to defend her relationship, and while letting one bar on one stage do the work of what other people would need a full press tour to accomplish. That is the discipline. That is the difference. One person makes music that has to be defended in interviews. The other makes music that speaks for itself in front of French Montana. One person is running a saturation PR campaign to convince the public she is loved. The other is being publicly loved by Rihanna without asking for it. One person is planning a baby in 2027 with a man who is not legally free to have one. The other has already raised her daughter through a prison bid, a career rebuild, and a public separation with her head held high. The contrast writes itself. And what makes it beautiful is that Remy did not have to say any of this. She let the culture connect the dots. She dropped one line at Angie Martinez's barbecue, and the entire industry finished the sentence for her. That is what integrity looks like when it is aged and seasoned and does not need to explain itself. That is what a real Bronx legend looks like when the streets are behind her. And I want every young woman who is watching this video to understand what Remy is modeling right now, because it is important. She is showing you that you do not need to fight for the receipts when the receipts fight for themselves. She is showing you that you do not need to defend your relationship in interviews if the relationship is real. She is showing you that you do not need to explain your worth to a man who is trying to extract half of it. You just build. You keep building. You keep touring. You keep networking. You keep raising your daughter. You keep showing up on stages that matter. And eventually, the man who did not know what he had will be sitting in a lawyer's office asking for a percentage of what he could not create himself. And the public will see it. And the public will judge it. And the public has judged it. Remy Ma is winning. Papoose is exposed. Claressa Shields is standing in the middle of a story that was never about her. And the culture, finally, is seeing it clearly. Now if you think this is where it ends, you have not been paying attention. Because this divorce is not final. And as long as this divorce is not final, we are going to keep getting moments like this one, and they're going to get worse for the people on the wrong side of it. Here is what I am watching for, and here is what you should be watching for too. First, I expect Papoose to respond publicly within the next 2 weeks, because he cannot let a moment this big go unanswered without losing whatever remaining credibility he has, and when he does respond, it is going to be messy. It is going to be defensive, and it is going to leak more information than his lawyers want leaked. Second, I expect Claressa Shields to walk into her next major interview and get ambushed with the asking for half question, and how she answers that question is going to define her public image for the next 12 months, because there is no clean answer. If she defends him, she looks like a woman defending a man who is trying to take half of another woman's money. If she distances herself, she confirms the entire theory that the relationship is a smokescreen. Either way, the interview is going to be a disaster, and it is going to happen soon. So if you are subscribed to this channel, you are going to see it broken down here first. If you are not subscribed, you are going to hear about it 3 days late from somebody who did not do the research. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. Get the notifications turned on. Because I promise you, the next chapter of this story is coming faster than anybody thinks, and when it drops, you want to be here for it. And speaking of the next chapter, if you thought this Papoose situation was rough, wait until you see what I have coming next about the way Cardi B has been quietly repositioning her entire Bronx alliance in real time, and what it means for a certain Atlanta rapper who thought he was still in the family. There is a photo. There is a deleted post. There is a subliminal from 3 weeks ago that nobody caught. And when I connect those 3 dots on camera, you're going to understand that the shift happening in New York hip-hop right now is bigger than one divorce, bigger than one boxer, and bigger than anything the timeline is currently talking about. Click the next video. Do not scroll past it. You do not want to miss what is coming.